Yep.
Okay, it's 6:30, and so good evening and welcome to the Olentangy Local Schools Board of Education business session. Today is Thursday, November 13th, and it is 6:30 p.m. I will call the meeting to order. Mr. Kern, please call the roll.
Mr. Bartz?
Here.
Mrs. Fiesel?
Here.
Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. White?
Here.
Mr. O'Brien?
Here. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. I don't believe we have any changes, amendments, additions. Nope. As written.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, please call the roll.
Mrs. Fiesel?
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes. Okay, the next agenda item is item 5. It's our presentation. This is a Smiles of Kindness program. It was Bella Chakowski. If you'd come up to the podium, welcome. Tell us about the Smiles of Kindness program.
Alright, so my name is Bella Chakowski. I go to Liberty High School. And last year my grandparents were in a car accident. My grandpa was one of the most lively people I know. He just full of energy, and that was all taken away from him last October when they got hit. They're heading to an AA meeting and they got hit head on. Well, they got smashed from behind by a 17-year-old drunk driver. Ironically enough. So he has been hospitalized since. My grandma got out with a few broken ribs and a concussion, but he is still in the hospital and will be for the rest of his life. So that inspired me to create an organization that tries to make people's hospital stay a little more bearable, starting with kids, because I think it's really unfair for kids at such a young age to have to endure this hospital stay. So this is him now. Obviously, he speaks only a few frail words every once in a while, and he is bedbound. And the one thing I noticed was that a small little gift or a card, or like there would be Girl Scout troops coming around, anything like that would make his face, which is usually just blank, light up a little bit. So that's where it inspired me to do socks, which everyone loves fuzzy socks because they're just comforting, to give to kids that are suffering in the hospital. Here are some of the examples of the socks. I have a few more up here that I would send out to hospitals around the country. I have a website where you can donate, and click, just 1 second. Very simple. You can just click the donate button up there, and I have a PayPal set up. And the donation is $10 per pair of socks that you want to donate. And the donation covers ordering socks from the provider I get them from on Amazon, shipping them back to my house, and then I send them out to hospitals around the country. So far, I have Michigan Children's, Colorado Children's, site of the accident, Nationwide, and Illinois, under all as receiving hospitals. So.
They get shipped out, and then the hospitals just decide which.
They distribute them to their kids, yeah. So far I've been fortunate enough to meet with a couple kids personally. On the left you have Xavier, who is a 6-year-old boy who just had a bone marrow transplant, staying at the Ronald McDonald House near Nationwide Children's Hospital, and he was very excited. You can tell he had a pair of the Navy socks on and ripped the packaging off and put them on right in front of me. So he was very talkative and very nice to meet, and it just was amazing to be able to affect him. And on the right, I have Jasmine, who is about 8 years old and has leukemia, high-risk leukemia. And again, she was very fun and nice to get to know, and she also lit up with the socks. So. I also have gotten some attention from local news stations. On the left, there's an interview with the 10 TV News with Jasmine, and on the right, the Columbus Dispatch. And both of those have gotten me a ton more attention than I could have ever dreamed of. Especially the Columbus Dispatch, my donations increased by 5 times. So it's amazing, and I'll be able to send out approximately 200 more pairs of socks to hospitals around the country. My goals right now for Smiles of Kindness, I submitted an application for the Prudential Spirit of Community Award, so I'm hoping something will come out of that because I know it's a great program to spread awareness for organizations and volunteer work like this. I'm also working towards hopefully getting my 501c3 title, which is expensive and time-consuming to do, so I need to find a way to fund that, and then I'll be working towards that. There have been some corporate inquiries on whether or not I am a 501c3 because they need to have that to donate. So hopefully that'll come soon. Like I said, I'll be sending out 200 pairs of socks, some more now since I've received more donations. And also, I'm reaching out to as many people as I can to tell about this, like friends, families, corporate companies, and just everyone I can, TV, news stations. I'm going to continue doing that because I think that's just the best way to get the word out about this and reach as many kids as I can. And again, the prime goal is to make more kids smile. So that's it.
Thank you so much for sharing your story.
What year are you? Oh, sorry. What year are you? Okay, because I saw the article in the Dispatch.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
That was great.
Yeah, a lot of people did see that. I had like 500 shares or something, so it was really impressive. Yeah.
I'm sure your grandfather would be proud.
He is. My
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great job.
Great job. Next is the board president's report, item 6. I've got 3 things, 2 of which I'll handle, and I'm going to let Julie take one. Olentangy Turf, as was published in yesterday's Olentangy Valley News. Great news that they found a donor to pay off the remaining debt of the turf. I think it's fantastic that we get last one in, first one paid off. Great example of how this community really supports schools, and we really put together a nice program there, and the boosters really came through, on their commitment to find a way, to get that funded, with private dollars. So it's a significant accomplishment, and we've got 2 more to go with Liberty and Orange. Second was we had the opportunity to attend the OSBA conference this week. I know I got down there, Roger, Dave, Julie, Bell, get to spend some time. I know several members of the administration get to spend some time. Great opportunity to really network with other board members, understand and learn from what other boards in districts are wrestling with, and then also a little bit to tell our story about the success we've had here. And I know we were the subject of at least a couple portions of the agenda, which was interesting. So hopefully you guys got some good learnings out of it, and so we encourage all of us to attend next year as well. And then last, I just want to ask Julie to go through legislative updates. There's been a fair amount of activity, and obviously a little bit of risk in a lame duck session, that some things get passed that aren't necessarily in our best interest. So Julie?
Yep. There are a couple bills that we're watching, and then some action by the State Board of Education that I'll discuss. First of all is the House Bill 597. That's the repeal of Ohio's new learning standards. It has passed through committee, the House committee. It was in the House Rules and Reference Committee. They did not put it through the Education Committee, which it should have gone to, but I won't get into that. So it's waiting now to be placed in front of the full House for a vote. If the full House votes on it, then it has to go through the Senate, through their committee structure, and then on to the full Senate for a vote. Governor Kasich, thank goodness, has said if it goes to him, he would veto it. If this bill would pass, what it would do is it would do away with our current educational standards, which Olentangy was an early enactor of those new Ohio Learning Standards. So we have been implementing them for a while now. Some schools just started them this year. But I want to point out that we had full implementation last school year, and we scored the highest performance index score that we've ever scored in the history of Olentangy. The new Ohio Learning Standards are increased rigor in the classroom, and if they are repealed, then next year we would have to go to Massachusetts' old learning standards. Massachusetts doesn't even use them anymore, and that would be for a time period of 2 to 3 years until new learning standards are then crafted by a committee that the legislature would put together. So that would mean Ohio's current fourth graders would have gone through actually 4 sets of learning standards throughout their whole educational career, which just doesn't serve our students well when you're changing their standards in the middle of their education career. It's a nonsensical bill, in my opinion. We've already invested millions throughout the state, millions of dollars and millions of hours in training our teachers and bringing the new curriculum into our classroom, and it would just be a waste of time and money. Hopefully it won't get to the House for a floor vote. I'm hearing they don't have the votes to pass it, so that is good news, but we are watching it. House Bill 228 was a funding bill. It was actually put out there by Representative Brenner. It has now turned into a testing reform bill. It would limit state testing to 4 hours per grade level per year. And that's, while yes, there are a lot of tests, standardized tests now in our curriculum, 4 hours may not be the prescription to go to because it may be too selective, and I know that Mr. Fetty has some comments that he's going to make later, but we'll see what happens to this bill. I think that maybe the premise is a good premise, but the way that it's crafted may not be in the best interest of our students. Yesterday there was actually an editorial in the Columbus Dispatch that talked about both of these bills, and the funny part of the editorial was that the same people who like 2 or 3 years ago were clamoring, we need a more rigorous education, we need more tests to hold our teachers accountable, are now saying we don't want this rigorous curriculum and we've got too much testing. So it's the same people that are complaining about what they were talking about 2 to 3 years ago. So the Dispatch doesn't like either bill, which that's fine. The next issue that I want to discuss came to us from the State Board of Education. There is a State Board of Education that rules all of the state of Ohio. Mike Collins is our representative from Westerville on the State Board of Education, and there's a rule out there. They've termed it the 5 of 8 rule, where the rule basically says, it's in the Ohio Administrative Code, that of these 8 different areas of teaching, and that can be guidance counselors, libraries, visiting teachers, phys ed teachers, art teachers, music teachers, guidance counselors, and social workers. Of those 8, a school district has to hire at least 5 of those areas per 1,000 students. The State Board of Education wants to do away with that rule. Their feeling is that if they do away with it, it gives more local control to the school districts so that they can hire what the schools need locally. I firmly believe in local control. Local control here in Olentangy has gotten us 22 credits that students need to graduate from high school versus the 20 that's required statewide. It also has brought us choir and strings in elementary schools, and it allows us to do to bring high school math down to the 8th grade level. It allows us to offer business classes at the high school. However, this bill, and I've talked to Kevin about it, kind of concerns us because we hate to take away some things that we believe that students should have. It's really going to put a focus on electing the right people to school boards, because if the local community wants things such as math, or such as phys ed, art, music, guidance counselors, they're going to have to make sure that they get the right people elected to the school board to make sure that those staff positions stay. So it's a slippery slope, I think. In one breath, the State Board of Education is talking local control, but in another breath, they certainly do put a lot of mandates on us that take away local control. So I don't know what their definition of local control is, but it's an interesting one. Our advocacy committee is now has a Facebook page. It's the OLSD Advocacy Committee Facebook page, and it's actually off of, you can find it off of our own Facebook page and on the district's website. But the advocacy committee is going to be reaching out to Mike Collins, our state Board of Education representative, to invite him to a meeting after the first of the year so that he can educate the advocacy committee on what the State Board of Education does. They also just hosted funding volleys last month. So they're up and running. They're advocating not just for school funding issues, but for educational issues that would impact the entire school district. So watch out for more.
Great, thank you, Julie.
Okay.
Adam, you get some comments on 5 of 8 in the paper today. Anything you want to add?
The only thing that gives more local control, that's good. You're talking about, you have to be very careful about who you elect your school board, but that's how the system's supposed to work. So, I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Okay, great. Anyone else? No? Okay, next item is the superintendent's report. Dr. Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Well, it's November, believe it or not, and I know before we get into good things, I want to say, Bella, thank you. Great job, number one. I was very impressed and moved by that effort. These are your parents, correct? Great job. Yes, sir. Appreciate it. Great job. Is that your sister?
Yes.
Great job there also. Thanks for coming and sharing what you do. I truly do appreciate it. We have many good things also along with Bella. Sunny 95 Teacher of the Month. Sunny 95 selects a Teacher of the Month in the Central Ohio region. Jared Mills, Liberty Middle School, is our teacher for the Sunny 95 Teacher of the Month. He, again, works at Liberty. Also, not only a great classroom teacher, but you probably heard a lot about his cross-country teams and the number of participants that he has and the great experiences that they have, not to mention his participation and leadership and fellowship of Christian athletes. So Jared's a great man, very kind, compassionate, and a leader, and we're very appreciative of the fact that we have him here in Olentangy. Another good thing, Scholastic Summer Reading Challenge, Wyandotte Run Elementary School, most minutes of any school in Ohio, 977,264. I haven't converted that over into hours, days, and things like that, but we have math people here that I'm sure could do that. Wyandotte Run leads the state in summer reading, so we congratulate them. Mr. O'Brien already talked about the fact that Olentangy had an anonymous donation of $246,000. I would echo his statements about the support that we get in this community. That whole effort from the last 3-4 years has been tremendous. And that ties right into, you're going to hear another presentation this evening in regard to Liberty Baseball. And same type of efforts, and we're very appreciative of the people that we have in this school system. Veterans Day, Tuesday. We've had Veterans Day activity throughout the week, finishes up tomorrow, but just a few that I can share with you. I would love to be able to share everything that we've done from a Veterans Day standpoint, but there you see a picture of breakfast with the veteran Tyler Runn. We had celebrations at Shanahan. This morning was Orange Middle. Liberty, or Hyatt's, I mean, is tomorrow. And again, I don't want to start naming them all because I know I'll leave one out. Great job by everyone. We are so appreciative of our veterans and what they have done for us throughout the years, and we celebrated them well throughout this week. Fall athletics. I want to get through these quickly, but I also want to give it its due. It's been a great fall throughout the Olentangy School District. Again, at Olentangy High School football, OCC champs for the first time ever. An undefeated season, regional semifinalists. They play tomorrow night at Worcester. Girls soccer, OCC champs, district champs, regional runner-up. We had state qualifiers in tennis, girls cross country. Orange High School, we had boys soccer, OCC champs. Liberty High School, we had field hockey, Central Ohio Field Hockey League champs, regional finalists. Boys state qualifiers. Boys soccer. I was able to spend Saturday at Crew Stadium. They were runner-up in the state. I could talk a long time about this program because the last 4 years they've either been in the semi or state finals. That is an individual that has a program going in the right direction over and over. He loses a ton of seniors. He comes right back. A very enjoyable day, by the way. And that's coming from an old football coach. So you know that's a good day for me. And I appreciate the hospitality of the administration, Mr. Wright and his team, Mr. Meeker at that state final. We had a great day. Girls soccer at Liberty was OCC champs, district champs, regional semifinalists. Great football season once again. Won their first round game against Whitmer. St. Ed Saturday night in the same spot that Olentangy. So if you're going up, you may just want to stay. We have Olentangy Friday night at 7:30. Come right back with Liberty Saturday night at 7 o'clock on the same field. Boys cross country, as we mentioned, Jared, regional qualifiers. Girls tennis had a state qualifier. I will say this because my sister coaches over there. Mr. Meyer is our principal at Orange. His daughter participated in the state tournament. Girls cross country, OCC champs, district champs, regional champs, state qualifiers. A great year. A great way to start the fall. I always said the fall season sets the tone at the high school level for your upcoming year. So we've had a great fall, and hopefully that continues. National Signing Day at OHS, LHS, and Orange. I'm not going to name them by name. You can see them there. There will be many more as the year progresses, but this is the beginning of the National Signing Day, and all of our individuals that go off to play. There's Liberty High School individuals, Orange High School individuals. So we're not only good academically, we're very good athletically, and of course I can talk more about the arts program too, because we have great participants in that. Here's a topic that's like, what? Ebola? Where does that come from? And it's pretty well gone, thank the Lord for that. But I just want to let everyone know that kind of came, and we hope it is gone. But I know we have representatives from our nurses in the back here this evening, and you know, we kind of went through this with mumps last year, and I hope individuals know and realize the steps that we take when we have specific issues such as Ebola coming to our district or our state, whatever that may be. We've continued to work closely with the Delaware General Health District. Our nurses participated in a webinar October 16th. The health district publicized the need to contact if traveling to impacted areas. As you know, we have a student welcome center, and they stay very busy, even now. As new student welcome center notifies if a student from an impacted area enrolls in the district, and as of right now, we have no confirmed cases of Ebola in Ohio. And believe me, I really contemplated, should I leave a slide in or should I not? Because it's pretty well, from a newsworthy standpoint, come and gone. But I just wanted people to know and understand that we were on top of it from the very beginning, as we always have or has happened through those issues, and kind of the steps that we take in working with the Delaware General Health District. So Ebola is not here, and we hope it does not arrive. Agenda items, again, somewhat of a short agenda, but we do have calculators that we're purchasing. And I think you got the update in regard to that, and that would be to comply with state testing requirements. We kind of had that discussion back and forth. Do we go to online testing? Do we not go to online testing? If we go to online testing, it's approximately $1.4 million we'd have to invest to get into the Chromebooks and the devices. If we stay paper and pencil, the penalty was only about $87,000. And again, it's like, okay, that kind of ties into what Julie talked about with that whole testing legislation and how much is too much and where does it stop, and we continue to have those conversations. We thought as a district we should kind of hold off on this diving straight into the online just to make sure where all this legislation is going to go. So granted, we're not crazy about buying $87,000 worth of calculators, but the security piece does have to take place. And at the end of the day, specifically the graphing calculators, which I believe were 81,000 of the 87, we will use those as we continue to go down through the years. So that is to comply with state testing requirements. Also, again, a little bit about Graphics Way. And bringing that facility up to speed from a technology standpoint. And by the way, we're not going to call it Graphics Way much longer, but we are getting that up and about. As you know, Oasis will start their second semester. Mr. Fetty will talk, and Mr. Rafe will talk a little bit about our plans for that building in next year, not only for the second semester, but into next year. But in order to do that, we need to get that up and going from a technology standpoint. Total budget to get that thing going is going to be a little bit less than $400,000. So that's part of that piece as we continue to strive to get that building online. Last but not least, we just a little bit, and I've already mentioned this, turf for Liberty High School baseball for the varsity JV fields. You're going to hear a very informative report. And again, I can't say enough to the group from Liberty about the efforts they put forth. This is very exciting. This is once again an example of a community that wants the best for not only their kids but for their community, and we're very appreciative of those individuals. Next meeting, looking ahead, believe it or not, is the last meeting of the year, which means we're going to be into the organizational piece in January. So just a few things. Tonight you're going to hear about an enrollment report. In December, we're bringing Scott Leopold in. You're going to hear about the build-out down the road, 20, 25 years. So that should be extremely informative for all of us. Last but not least, just a teaser. I talked about Paul Fallon and our customer satisfaction survey. That took place last week. The results are back. Mr. Fallon will be here on December the 11th. I just had to throw a couple teasers in there to kind of pique your interest. Two questions that we asked. How would you rate the quality of education being provided by the Olentangy School District? Total positive rating of 88.2%. Total negative rating of 0.7. That is less than 1%, by the way. 0.7 total negative rating of the quality of education. So a lot of people out there truly believe that what's happening in the Olentangy School District is a very good thing. And that's a credit to our staff, our students, our parents, and our community. The second little teaser that we put out there, how would you rate the job Olentangy has done to ensure safety and security? As you know, most of you, I believe, went through the ALICE training. I think our individuals in the community have taken notice because we asked that question last year and it was down around 83.8, 84%. It jumped 5%, which made that a statistical significant jump because the margin of error was roughly 4.9%, which means a lot of people have taken notice, number one. And I believe since it's got such a high positive rating, I believe our community would tell you it's very much needed. very much needed, very much appreciated. And again, I'll throw out to Mr. Marsh that because he has spearheaded this thing and kind of driven it through, and we appreciate the work that he has done. So that's the two of the 20, I believe it was 29 questions that we asked. We will have that full report for you on December the 11th. With that said and done, I will entertain any questions that the board may have at this time.
Anything for Dr. Lucas?
I just have one question on those calculators.
Yes.
What do you do then? Because they're saying at some point we do have to move to online testing.
Yes.
So we've bought these calculators.
Yes.
We're going to have to go to online testing. What do you do with the calculators when you go to online testing?
We will be providing those graphing calculators for our students. Right now, they currently purchase some of those for the higher math.
Yes, my daughter has hers in college.
Right.
She took hers
So-
with her.
So now they will be able to use them. We will be able to provide them for our students.
Okay.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kern, Treasury Report, item 8.
Yes, talking about treasurer action items for this evening. To approve the board minutes for October 9th and 23rd. Approve the amended FY15 appropriations at fund level. I want to bring up one of those real quickly. It's almost a follow-up from our October meeting. If you remember, Ms. Eisman came in and talked about workers' comp. Over the last 2009 to the current year, by being self-insured, we've saved approximately $2 million over that time. But she did mention that we did from last winter. Hopefully this winter won't be. I see some snow out here earlier today. Hopefully that won't continue. But we still have some ongoing claims that we are managing. So what we're doing is upping the appropriation. This should hopefully cover us for the rest of the year. So this is still will be below what we had. We stayed on the Bureau of Workers' Comp program. So I just wanted to bring that out, point of kind of follow up from the last meeting. And then we also had this evening improve the donations to the district. We have some iPads, some Chromebooks, some stuff for strings, and then another supplemental for Liberty High School. We do appreciate our PTOs and our boosters who support us. Talking about them, PTOs and boosters, my office along with Jeff Borden, talk about from the liability aspect. We'll be hosting our annual training or update, whatever you want to call it, next Monday in this room at 7, I believe, for our PTOs and our boosters to talk about. We'll actually have an attorney who's coming in and also talking about any IRS issues, any ethics issues. We'll talk about some just good accounting practices, and then Jeff will talk about the liability as they're covered underneath our liability.
No, is that a new program?
It's something, I believe, we did it last year. Last year it kept getting bumped because we had some weather issues. We didn't do it until February last year, and I believe they may have done it the year before. But this will be, I believe, the third year that's done. So it's a little earlier than we've done it before. But
I think it's incredibly valuable, right, to make sure that those folks who are volunteering their time, we can give them as much advice and counsel on how to do it right as possible. So it's fantastic.
And for those of you who's been there, program really hasn't changed because really the laws and stuff really haven't changed too much, but still the officers do turn over quite frequently in these organizations. So that's why we'll continue to have it annually. And then, I get questions throughout the year about, we best try to either, if it's a relationship with the district or just other issues, and if it's something higher, we'll push out to, attorney or something like that. So that's that. Next agenda, you may see we're working on a possible refunding from a 2008 bond issue, about $35 million. If things stay, interest rates have come back down a little bit, we'll probably save about $2.8 million over the life, which would be, I think, final maturity is around 2035 or so. So that might be something you might see on the next agenda. So. And then finally, it goes along with one of our presentations this evening. We'll talk about maybe a little more there, but good news for not only the district and our employees, is our medical insurance rates are not going up; they're staying flat. So, like I said, we'll talk about that a little bit in our insurance update. That should, while that information came in after our 5-year forecast, we'll of course update that in the spring. But that should save us approximately $1 million this year. As you know, we're on the new plan year starts January 1. So we previously had about 8% increase in there. So we feel fortunate with that going forward.
Right.
Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Kerr? Okay. All right, we'll now have a public participation session number 1 for general comments. Do you have any?
Yes, we have 2 this evening. First, Kabir.
Okay.
He will be talking about the Olentangy African American Families Organization.
Okay.
First of all, I'd like to thank you guys for allowing me to be up here. I'd like to talk about Olentangy African American Association. Essentially, it's a organization that brings together the African American families and students to create in a supportive and friendly environment so all the kids can get to know each other. We moved to Olentangy about 4 years ago. We found it to be one of the best school districts around, but some of our kids didn't really see too many African American children. So we figured that they had to be around somewhere, and we're in Hyatt, so in my son's grade there were 5 total. So we wanted an opportunity where the kids could get together and see other kids. We've had several picnics. We've had several meetings, we've had Dave and Buster meetings, bowling events. One of the things we also did is at our picnics, we took the opportunity to honor all the African American students who have had a GPA of over 3.0 or higher. So our goal at this point is to partner with Olentangy schools to pretty much continue to follow up with, to help with any diversity efforts that you have, because we already have a lot of diversity efforts in play. We want to become essentially another branch of the diversity committee. So that's pretty much my spiel. I know it's getting late, so I'm not going to hold my people too much longer. But I just wanted to make everyone aware of that.
Yeah.
Great, thank you, Jay.
And this is, I believe you do have a Facebook page too, because
Yes.
I've seen it out there.
And
so
I know Julie,
Yes,
my wife follows you incessantly. So,
So I just want to make people aware, if they want more information, they do have a Facebook page.
Yes.
That's terrific. And have you been in touch with the diversity and inclusion committees?
Yes.
Okay.
Heather, yes.
That's terrific.
Great.
I've been a member of the diversity committee for the past 2 years, so yes.
All right, well, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for Olentangy.
Thank you.
The last one, the second one I should say, is Diane. I apologize if I butchered this. Baggern, sorry. She's going to talk about high school start time and lunchtime for the high schoolers.
First of all, thank you for allowing me to speak. This is the first time I've made it to a school board meeting. First time I've had a reason to want to come to a school board meeting. I've lived here since 1997, so my daughter went to Oak Creek Elementary, Orange Middle School. This is her first year at the high school. She has to get up at 10 till 6 every day, and I have to get her to the bus stop at 6:30 a.m., and it picks her up at 6:35. So she eats her breakfast at 6:15. I don't want to go into too much detail, but then she doesn't get her lunch until 12:20. She goes 6 hours without being able to eat. So I'm concerned about that. I'm not exactly sure what they can do to fix that, but I just really wanted my concerns to be heard. And the start time is very early. She mentions to me, and I don't allow her to have Starbucks coffee or energy drinks, but she tells me that all of her other friends, that's what they do so that they can stay alert in the morning. And I'm concerned that we're teaching them the wrong message here, to get addicted to caffeine and Monster Energy and these high energy drinks just so that they can be alert to learn in the morning. So that's my concern, and I appreciate you guys listening to me, and I'm really interested in the survey results. And I know you guys were going to talk about that. And I was also concerned about the survey because I know I didn't get a phone call, but I know they were only going to call 400
Yes.
maybe.
Every year.
And I'm concerned that maybe those parents, if they do get the phone call, they've got elementary school children and their start time is great. Middle school was even great. It's just the high school that seems to be too early. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Dan. Do you want to spend a minute on what
Yeah.
we've found so far in the survey, what we may do, some next steps from that?
I might add, first of all, thank you for coming. The survey results, we did ask that question regarding the flipping the time, and the results were actually closer than I thought it would be, which we're going to move further with a survey to ask even more parents of kids, because our survey that we ask every year is demographically in comparison to our school district. So we have 57% of our people do not have kids in school, so we call 57% of that 400 would be no kids in school. So we are going to take further steps, ask additional questions, and probably if that continues in the trend that we see it, that conversation will come back here for a work session. Yes.
Yep, and there has been another mother who has been coming to the meetings, to our board meetings and speaking, and I believe she has an elementary student and she's concerned about next year. So I just want people to know that it's just not a high school issue, but that some of the elementary parents are already realizing, oh, next year middle school, So I don't want you to make you feel like you're the only one and that's only high school, because there are others out there.
Any other comments? Okay, we'll now go into agenda item 10, which are all the discussion items. First up is the insurance update in terms of context. I'd invite Steve Keller and Hewitt to the podium. Brian, you going to speak as well?
I'm just going to introduce Steve real quick and talk a few points, and then Steve's kind of going to take over. This is Steve Keller, one of our insurance broker and consultant. If you remember, we went through an RFP process this year. We hadn't done one in a few years. We both looked at fully insured, and we looked at self-insured. And we brought this up a few times, and it was the board's request that we have just take a few minutes and talk about self-funding, what that means for the district. As I mentioned in my treasurer's report, there's some good things that Steve will kind of bring up, but one of the things that results is we don't have any increases, among other things, good claims history the last year or so too also, but one of the reasons, here's why we're going to self-funding. So I'd like to say thanks to Steve for A, coming this evening, but B, just finally getting here. Yeah, and like I said, some traffic problems too, but all the work that's gone in. I don't know if he'll mention this tonight, but one of the hardest things, or most time-consuming thing, is doing an RFP process. As you can see a big white binder over there. That they did a nice job of providing tons of information for us and help making our decisions here. So. I want to give Steve credit for that. So with that, let Steve talk about what self-funding means for the district.
And this is a 2-day course condensed down to about 10 minutes, so bear with me. Brian said we did a pretty deep drill down into the details on self-funding versus fully insured. Your size group is well within the norm to do a self-funding. I have 2 other school systems in Central Ohio that are similar size to you. They've been self-funding for 2 or 3 years, so nothing unusual at all. One of the big things moving to self-funding is the savings that it's involved. Approximately about $2.1 million in savings for the next year. The major components of that savings are state premium tax. If you're a fully insured contract, you have to pay 1.4% of that premium as a tax. Under a self-funded arrangement, you don't pay that. Pure savings. With the market share fee under the Affordable Care Act, that's something that's relatively new. I think that kind of turbocharged the interest in the financial savings, what it could represent. But the market share fee is approximately 2.7% of a premium. And that will increase each year for the next several years. That calculation was $663,000 of pure savings. If you're a fully insured contract, you pay the amount. If you're self-funded, you don't. And so pretty good savings there. And then also reduced risk charges, or another term for that is profit, for the insurance carrier, about $307,000. So those were the major components of the savings piece of it. So it was very, very lucrative for the school system to do this. One of the main things I am always asked is, what will the employees see as changes? Well, very, very little. It's the same benefits. There's negotiated benefit as of 1/1/15 for the HSA deductible that goes in play, and then there was a Affordable Care Act requirement about putting co-pays underneath the maximum out of pocket for prescription drugs. Had to do that. But it's the same customer service numbers, same people answering the phone, same network providers, same PPO providers, hospitals. MMO is going to remain the carrier. Claims processing the same. The only thing, and I think I got a hold of Emily this afternoon, the only thing I think is different is the group number that's going to be on the ID card.
So new insurance cards for everybody.
Yeah, so new insurance cards for everybody, and that's the only difference. So other than that, and I've changed a lot of companies in the past from fully insured to self-funding, and majority of the time the employees don't even know it happened. It's a financial situation.
Exactly. This is more of a financial transaction, or financial opportunity than it is. We're not hiring claims people, we're not administering claims. We're letting the same professional people do that.
I'll use a very, very simplified example of this. Again, it's very simplified from buying a car, whether you lease it or you buy it. It's just the way you finance it. It's the same car, it's the same benefits, same program. It's just a different way you finance it. Some of the things will be different for Brian and his group. With a self-funded arrangement, you have a shared account with the insurance carrier. They process the claims, and they basically call you up and say, we process $10,000 a day, so give us $10,000. We have financial guardrails, as I call them, around large claim situations. You want to make sure that you have protection for both an aggregate and a specific stop loss. So we purchased specific stop loss at a $235,000 level, which is the same what you had under fully insured, and you pay a premium for that. So any large claim that happens, $500,000, $800,000, whatever else, you pay the first $235,000 in a year. The insurance protection you have pays above that. Also, and I call this sleep at night insurance, the aggregate stop loss. We've estimated out, so as a memo, the amount of claims that you anticipate for next year, and you have a stop loss at 120% of that level. You pay a premium for that. So lots of things happen really bad, you would have protection there. So if you have the appropriate financial guardrails on that. You're responsible for your incurred but not reported claims and plan termination if that ever happens. Under Section 9.833, the Ohio Revised Code, you have to provide that 90 days after the plan year. We'll provide that information to you through our actuaries at Aon Hewitt. And then Aon Hewitt will be providing the funding for it each year. We have actuaries that do this. Don't feel concerned. I don't do it. My actuaries do. It's just a different way to finance your health care.
And in that, the actuaries providing the rates, they're also providing, self-funding where they have a factor in there for reserves. He talked about the co-pays medical co-pays now being included. That's been factored in there, and then kind of a margin, I don't know if you call it a guardrail, but also kind of a margin there to make sure, in case hopefully we don't have, like he mentioned, those big claims out there. So.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Are you going to have to hire anyone in your office?
No.
Any additional staff? Okay.
No.
And I guess from an accounting perspective, right, the reserve didn't put up until the segregated fund,
Yes.
right? It won't be part of the operating fund.
No.
So now, in essence, have an operating fund, capital fund, and then we'll have, in essence, health insurance.
We already have a self-insured, our workers' comp fund.
So, okay.
Similar as that.
It's just not like we're going to see swings in our cost per pupil ratio because of claims activity. It's all going to be its own fund.
Yes. So essentially what happens is you charge the operating fund, not only the districts, you have the employee share, but you also have the district, the board or district share will be paid into another fund that will then help pay the claims and administration.
And it's very much a natural evolution, right? We're in the consortium, but we're trying to get better rates by sharing with the districts. They kind of break out their own and use, standard product. Now we're large enough where we can take on manage our own risks.
We're large enough to do that now, yes.
Okay, good job. Any questions for?
That's a good report.
Mr. Kelly? Thank you. Okay, so. Yeah, so now this was in the October forecast here, right? So it'll start to be baked into May, or do we put any in?
No, the savings will hit in May.
I just have one other question. You said that there's about 2.1 million in savings due to your reduction in taxes and a reduction in fees. And then you stated earlier that our insurance costs we're not going to escalate. And in the forecast, we had put in there like 8%. So you take that out, you take out 2.1 million, ballpark what you're going to be adding, to the 5-year forecast. Well, or you won't be taking away in the expenses.
And let's talk about that 2.1. And Steve, correct me if I'm wrong here on any of this. Is when you compare fully insured to self-insured in itself, all things being equal. Let's say claims came in. I think the example that you gave me, Steve, is around 24 million. That the savings compared with between fully insured and self-insured is $2 million in those fees. So, does that make sense?
Right, I got that.
Okay.
But in the 5 year,
It's not necessarily savings in a 5
the
year.
savings that we'll see in the spring on the 5-year forecast, exactly.
That's different savings. That's just savings compared to fully insured and self-insured. Why are we doing that? The savings I mentioned is the $1 million that you'll see this year. It's about 1.8, 1.9 on an annualized basis that we'll see. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
round number,
And the
still roughly 2 million.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
2.1 is 1.
Yes.
Ballpark is 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Savings are always good to report.
Yes.
Keep coming. Good.
For cost avoidance, I guess, maybe too.
yes, cost avoidance.
Next item is item B, the enrollment projections update. Ralph Ah from our facilities committee and Tracy Healy from Future Think will walk us through the new enrollment projections.
Hello,
Good to see you again.
be here. As Dr. Lee decided it's November, so that's usually when I show up. Is that right? Just gonna the PowerPoint pulled up here in a second. What I want to do is just kind of hit some of the highlights of the report for this year for the enrollment projections, and then Ralph will talk to how that impacts in terms of the facilities committee and what they're doing. So this year, traditionally each year I put in the report and the model that we've used. And for the last 4 years, we've used the same model. And we're moving forward with our recommendation to continue with that model, and we'll talk about the reasons why we're doing that. But in addition to taking a look at the traditional smoothing model, as Ralph calls it, we've also looked at a modified housing, and that was in response to kind of some of the anecdotal data as well as some of the quantitative data we've been looking at regarding, housing recovery, and are we going to be seeing more students, and would a housing model, which we had used in the past, make sense now? So we took a look at that as well. But as I said, our recommendation is to stick with our traditional model, at least at this time. Looking at our actual versus projected enrollment, I'm happy to report we were within 13 students this year. So I, did a little dance at home when it came out, right? So within less than, 0.07%. I think that was the same figure Dr. Lucas had up earlier too, but definitely less than 1%, right? so it's happy to see that. Again, kind of another reason why to keep with our current model. The historical enrollment up about 4% from last year, so we're at just over 19,000 students, including the pre-K enrollment. One of the things that we continue to look at too are the birth counts in the zip code areas. And we have seen a trend since 2008 of those really declining. And in 2012, kind of at a low of 899 from where we had been. So again, kind of pointing to, while we're hearing about things about recovering and new housing and things, our birth rate has continued to drop over the past few years. Building permits, we took a look at year to date so far was about 250. That was based on Columbus, which we were only able to get through June numbers, and then through July for the rest of the townships and municipalities. We were still unable to get City of Delaware, so I wanted to just point out that we're about 50 less than probably where we would be, because Delaware had been about 50. And they had run into some computer issues with pulling out those that were just simply in the Olentangy district versus those that were in other districts. So we've been unable to get that data, so I wanted to make sure that we're kind of about 50 short. We looked at projecting for the rest of the year based on what the current trend was, and if it were to stay the same rate of development that we'd seen in through June and July, for the remainder of the year, we'd be at 429. And then we also looked at another model of kind of taking the higher of those 2 years, like whether it was what we had in 2013 or with our projected model for 14. And if we were there, we'd be at 557. So we figured somewhere in that 500 range is where we're going to be at the end of the year. And this was important for us when we were taking a look at that housing model to kind of get where would we be this year as we looked at that projection.
Did you have the opportunity to layer in any of the higher density buildings? Because we've got about 1,000 units under construction across the district.
Yes. So we took a look at the multifamily. The chart shows, just Powell and the unincorporated areas in Delaware County, and we were through May at 339 total. Then I talked with the City of Columbus, because that's really where I think the majority of the concern is, right, in terms of where the housing will be. Through June of this year, we're at 92 total units for the multifamily housing, and then in the previous 2 years, 2012, 2013, we had 0. So again, that's something that we really want to keep an eye on as we're seeing more of that development and what that impact has been, and typically looking at what those yield rates are as well. Previously we had seen very low yield rates for multifamily, less than 0.2 per unit. So really for every 5-6 units, we were seeing maybe 1 student. So we want to, again, as more of that development comes on, monitor that very carefully.
Because the mix is changing. If you go back to that chart, look at the peak years of 03 and 04. Today it's like 3 times the peak. Go back to the single family.
Yeah. Oh,
about a third of the peak. It's almost the years mix.
Yeah.
If we're in the 500s, then we're 1,500 in the peak years.
Yeah.
So that mix is definitely changing. It's something
Absolutely.
to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. So as we looked at that, as I mentioned, our recommendation is using the same model that we had been previously. We did consider the housing model, which should development start occurring at a faster rate, we wanted to take a look at where that may lead us. Certainly the traditional model at this time is a more conservative model, and as I mentioned, we'll need to continue to monitor the housing development and its impact on enrollment and how those yield factors may be changing as new development comes on. So here, using the traditional model, we have an increase of 11% over the 10-year period, so just over 21,000 students in the out year. Pretty, consistent elementary, right at, kind of that 8,900, just under 9,000 students in the K-5 level. See some uptick in the middle school level, about 400 students, and then at the high school level, about 1,800 students. So again, as those, our students move through the system, we have, kind of some of those bubbles, and you can see our high school enrollment peaks out at, just under 7,200 in the 21-22 school year.
So has the peak year come in a little bit? Right now, it looks like it's 21, 22 is the peak.
Mhm.
We actually start to level off and decline.
Right.
Is that about the same as last projection?
It is, and I have that to take a look at too. This projection's a little bit lower than where we were last year.
Okay.
But pretty consistent. As I mentioned, the housing model, what we did was we took a look at if the housing development for single family increased to about 700 homes per year and looked at that model. This is kind of where that would take us. And we went back to kind of those peak building years where we were seeing a lot of housing and what those yields were at that period in time. And so putting that together, this takes us to just under 24,000 students over that 10-year period, so an increase of about 25%. So again, it's something, kind of put out there. As Dr. Lucas mentioned, Scott Leopold will be here next month to talk about his student potential and build-out report. And so as we were, as I met, Ralph and I both met with Scott to talk about his report and its potential impact on what we're doing with the enrollment projections. And so he had within his kind of a 750 model and 1,000 model, and so we wanted to kind of see how those two things played out. Felt that was a responsible thing for us to do and provide you with that information. Here's the 2013 projection and how it compares, and we're about 381 students, so about 2%, so a little bit higher. But again, fairly consistent among the grade levels or the grade groupings. So looking at our K-5 total, middle school and high school. So our high school projection is a little bit higher this year than it was last year. And that, as we looked at kind of the comparisons, in using our traditional model, we look at the last 2 years, the average survival ratio for that period of time. Pretty much in every category that went up. Our average went up this year from last year. So again, as we kind of play that out. So it points to, yes, we are seeing some recovery and little increases, but not yet at the rate that we might have thought we were. And then additionally within the report, and I'm not going to go through school by school, we'd be here all night, but we also provided, as we've had in the past, the projections by school. We use a similar methodology as with the district-wide projections, looking at the survival ratios individually, school by school, and then putting them in with their feeder patterns, so which elementaries go to the middle school to the high school, and put that together using the district-wide projections obviously as the baseline. So those serve as our fundamental piece, and then we looked at each of the schools individually. Wanted to point out that pre-K is not included at the elementary school level, since that's kind of a rotating thing. So when you're comparing, actuals, enrollments, I just want to make sure that, that pre-K is not in there. So some that look lower, that's why. And this year, again, as I mentioned with the DeYoung report that Scott's been working on, really helped us shape the by-school projections more clearly, because what Scott has done in the report is looked at all of the subdivisions and their individual yields, as well as what the potential is for development within each of those subdivisions. So I was able then to look at that very intensive spreadsheet in relation to, at a school by school basis. So knowing these subdivisions feed this school, so that better informed, the by school projections. But I will say certainly the by school, there's a lot more art to those in terms of, the district-wide, just because we're still kind of testing those models, and, there's a higher level of error, the smaller you get, in terms of your numbers. So, but I feel that these, certainly are better informed as we've gotten that data. So, that is.
Just a couple other comments from, good evening. Just a couple other comments from what Tracy said. if you look at since 2008, our birth rate has been constant and our housing has been constant. And Tracy talked that our existing smoothing model is conservative, and indeed it is. But because we're only using 2 years, if we start seeing housing increasing, it's reflected in that survival ratio. So as Tracy mentioned, is that the survival ratios from grade to grade this year are a little bit higher, not 100% of the time, but across most grades are a little higher. So what that's starting to say is even with the traditional smoothing model, we're starting to see some impact for housing increase. Okay, and then also as Tracy mentioned that we collaborated with Scott on his build out, and one of the things we didn't want to do is come to the board and Scott saying X and we saying Y. So that's why we said we better look at the housing model, which is what Scott had adopted for the build out, to make sure that we said, yes, Scott, or yes, board, we considered that, but don't believe it's time at this point to adopt that model. Okay? Then I've changed the structure of this presentation a little bit, and I've gone to a recommendation, then the numbers to back up the recommendation. So first we're going to talk about the elementary school. Actually, real quickly here, for the two different models, this is showing the difference between the traditional smoothing model and the housing model. So over 10 years, we end up with almost 2,500 additional students in the housing model. And what you're going to see is that when we looked at school needs, we actually considered both models, just an FYI. Okay? Elementary. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Observations, conclusions in the elementary schools. Students per section grades 3 to 5 has just creeped up a little bit. So it's about 24 this year, up from 23 last year. And from a building utilization, that's actually a good thing. The design for the school is based upon 24 in a classroom. And as we're less than 24, that means we're not getting as efficient usage of the school. So class size gets 24. From building utilization, that's a good thing. Grades 1 through 2, excuse me, range about 22. Kindergarten also appears to have increased a little bit from 17 to 19. Good news here, no elementary schools are forecast in a 10-year period, although there is enrollment imbalance between schools. And as Tracy alluded to in the Young report, what we see is that as the existing subdivisions age, the yield tends to drop. As new housing subdivisions come on board, they tend to go up. So what you're going to see is a gradual evolution from those areas which have a lot of built-out subdivisions to those which don't yet have built-out subdivisions. So it's just going to exacerbate the imbalance in the enrollment in the elementary schools. Again, as we talked about before, there is an increased enrollment between traditional smoothing and the housing model. But overall, our capacity, even with the housing model, our capacity exceeds forecasts regardless of what model we use in the elementary. So we look good on the elementary. Next slide. This is just numbers. Don't worry about that. If you want to read them,
I'm sure you did the work.
Yeah, please feel free. Next one. Let's go to the next slide now. Okay, Tracy mentioned that we, this is the art that Tracy mentioned in terms of putting the enrollment against capacity. Now, there are two differences here, and Dr. Lucas taught us when we did this presentation and said, Ralph, why are your numbers different than the numbers that Tracy had? Well, there are two reasons. Number one is that hers is counting a kindergartner as one. I take that and count a kindergartner as a half, because obviously we have half-day kindergarten, so therefore we can get two students into one classroom. The other one is that I wanted to include the pre-K. So what I did with the pre-K, I assumed that the pre-K would be in existing schools that house pre-K, and I just kind of did a little bit hard to make sure the numbers match. So they're
They're there.
I just want to point something out
Okay.
that I think goes to your point of neighborhoods aging out. And if you look at Alum Creek Elementary School, you're at 533, but then at the end you're at 510. That neighborhood, the neighborhoods that feed, there's no more building going on there. And then if you jump down to Cheshire, you're at 635 now, and it goes up to 671. That's in an area where there could be building going on, and so that shows
Exactly.
your aging of the neighborhoods.
It does,
Yeah.
and this is where, and I don't want to steal Scott's presentation next month, but there's a lot of things we don't know about that building. We don't know the density. We don't know what zoning will happen. We don't know the rate at which we'll grow. So it's when you talk about unbuilt land, it's a little bit of art and a lot of science. And if I knew the answer, I would be here. I'd be Council of Economic Advisors president. So he hasn't called me recently. Okay, next page. So you see the only school that we have red there is Olentangy Meadows. But again, it's not bad. It's not bad from the elementary standpoint. Okay. Middle school. One thing I do want to mention. I put in in the middle school and in high school the new facility.
Yeah,
what we're calling
we
it.
don't have a name for it yet.
The
Graphics Way.
building who will be named later. So I put in there zero capacity. So it's going to be really, really easy once the administration provides guidance in terms of how it's going to be used to assess the impact of that on our existing capacity. Okay, just so you know, you're going to see zeros running through that.
With that said, it would be highly unlikely that elementary students would be in there.
Right.
Right. I did put it only in middle and high school. So in middle schools, traditional forecasting models show capacity constraints in 1718, 1819, 1920. If we go to the housing forecasting model, we show significant capacity constraints every year from 1617 on. Regardless of the model, there remains an imbalance in enrollment at the different middle schools, with east side schools being severely constrained while west side schools have excess capacity. So again, we're seeing a geographical challenge with existing district layout.
And this also, because the fifth grade is still the largest single class, right? So you start seeing it come through the middle school next.
Right. Shanahan and Berkshire show the most enrollment stress. We are still, the facilities committee is expecting that the overcapacity can be accommodated by administrative actions, not requiring construction of new facilities, although we're not ruling out the need for some capital improvement, especially in regards to Shanahan. Last year we looked at some capital improvement. They didn't come to fruition, but we might need to do some a little capital improvement. Okay. There you can see I've got graphics way facilities down there at zero, and so once we decide what happened, easy to put those in and see the impact on that assessment. But you can see overall, based on the design constraints, we've got a lot of red numbers, especially down there in the 750 housing model. The traditional smoothing model doesn't really look bad, except for the enrollment imbalance.
Yeah, we assumed some additional capacity at this level, right? So I think we assumed additional capacity here. I think we still published 950.
Yeah, I'm assuming we can hit 1,000. So.
Which helped alleviate it. If we looked at this last year, it was more red because the capacity numbers were lower.
Right.
Now that we've got more experience,
we
know there's more capacity.
And that's the same. You're going to see the same thing in the high schools. We know that Liberty High School can do 1,900. So we said, well, if we know we can do 1,900, then obviously
do
1,900. That's the floor, yeah. So we know we can do that. So let's make it 1,900. And similarly with the middle schools, we said, well, we know we can do 1,000. It's certainly up to the board to figure out if that's good or bad. But from our standpoint, just numbers,
we're reflecting our experience, right? To the extent that we're in this longer, we can see this evolve. Sure. It reflects in our modeling as well, which is good.
So again, this is the a traditional model by school, and again, you're starting to see some red numbers out there. A lot of red numbers down there at Olentangy, Shanahan. Now, my understanding is that the move of Oasis will free up some space there, so some of that gets relieved by the graphics way facility. Okay. High school. This is the interesting one. All high schools continue to show severe capacity constraints during the 10-year forecast. As you were mentioned before, Liberty High School has shown the ability to support 1,900 students via administrative action. It is assumed that Orange can do likewise because they're fundamentally the same. Olentangy High School has demonstrated we can do 1,800. That's what I used as the baseline capacity. We also looked at if we can get to 2,200. Again, I said, if we can get to 2,200 students for all of our high schools, for each of our high schools, then we still are exceeding that capacity a little bit at the different schools. 6% of Liberty in 2021, 10% of Orange 23-24, and 17% of Olentangy in 23-24. The last bullet there is the one we're really looking for. We can't make a recommendation this time with the graphics week coming on, with Mr. Rafe and Mr. Fetty coming with a different academic approach. By the way, we've invited them, or Jeff has invited them to one of our committee meetings. February? Anyway, soon to talk about that. We really need some guidance in terms of what capacity is and how we can use the existing capacity. So at this time, unfortunately, we can't say we need to do X or need to do Y. It's just premature. Next page, let's go to by school. So this is where we're starting to look at the individual schools by year. And we looked at both the 1,900 capacity and the 2,200 capacity. And as you can see, we've got red all over the place. So it's a bit of a challenge there. Kind of on a side note, the facilities committee met. We've been doing school walkthroughs, and on October 22nd, we did a walkthrough of Liberty High School, and the committee wanted to see a high school in action. We said, well, typically we've been doing it in evenings. That doesn't give you a sense of a school when we have 1,900 students walking through there. So we want to see it at peak class change, at peak lunch period. And it was really very interesting. And again, every time I see the students at Olentangy, I'm just blown away. We have great kids here. We really do. So we looked at several facets. We looked at circulation. So we stood there where the two academic wings come in, and the administration. We stood right there and watched the peak period. And we said, 1,900 students here really was smooth. We did see that adding 300 more students is really going to impact that circulation at that pinch point. Plus, Mr. Wright has some thoughts about one-way stairs that will be alleviated more. So we did see overall circulation as being a problem. We also asked, well, how are these kids getting to the restroom? Again, he did not believe that the restrooms were a constraint. So, say, check. Lockers. There was a real constraint on lockers, but there was discussion about, well, could you, one of our members said she has a student in Orange and she doesn't use a locker. I said, well, just ask the students if they want a locker or not. And maybe there's a lottery and they said, I don't want a locker, I don't need a locker.
Yeah, I can echo that. My daughter is a freshman. She does not use a locker.
And we're figuring most kids are just carrying their iPad or their phone, and they're not lugging a lot of books anyway. Classrooms are probably the most interesting. We happened to come upon a room where we had make sure you get the nomenclature right, 2 displaced teachers and 1 traveling teacher. So a traveling teacher is one who doesn't have a currently assigned room, and the displaced teacher is one who's knocked out of the room as the traveling teacher goes in. And we said, okay, well, how's it working for you? And they said pretty good. the traveling teacher said the challenge she has is that there's no place that she can tell the student she's going to be for the student to meet with the teacher. So we as a committee said, aha, the problem's not classrooms, it's teacher-student meeting rooms. And if you think about it that way, it kind of puts a different slant on the kind of space we would need as the enrollment goes up. Science labs, there's a bit of a squeeze on not the lab tables themselves, but the tables to be used for the classrooms, and we don't think that's really strategically critical. Eating space, and this goes to the Karen talked a little while ago. There are 4 lunchrooms. We have an eating area capacity, my notes say 512. It's not going to be enough as we get much larger. So we didn't have any, Mr. Wright said he could add a couple tables and get 60 more students fed. That still is not enough, so I think there's some creative thinking needs to be done in that area. I don't have any recommendations, but that's a bit of a challenge. The theater, I think the same thing that somebody mentioned, maybe some creative use of the theater space. Parking appeared to be ample at Liberty. Mr. Gordon said at Orange it's tight, so I'm not sure we'll have the capacity constraint at Orange. And again, there was discussion there. The day after we were there, they're going to have a discussion with their Delaware Area Career Center. So again, that goes to the academic programs. And what's going to happen is more and more students attend dual enrollment, DACC, et cetera, so that might take some pressure off of our buildings. Any questions?
I just wanted to caution people that even though we've seen, especially here, we see building out front, new houses out back, yet those houses aren't sold yet. So it's really difficult, and that is reflective in the housing permits. We see the infrastructure going in, but we don't have the building permits to say, oh yeah, there's a house, so there's 0.7 kids coming out of it. So until we start seeing some sales, it's really hard to gauge an impact on this new infrastructure that we see going in.
Also, I think what I like to hear, what I like in your presentation is, as we look at the capacity constrained areas, we're trying to think creatively how to address capacity other than just build buildings, right? So it's what type of space, is it incremental space, is it standalone space? I think it's to make sure we're exploring all options.
Exactly. These building walkthroughs by the facility committees, that's not so interesting, but talking to the principals is very enlightening in terms of how they're using the space. And I think if we had to do it all over again, knowing how education is growing today, our buildings would look quite different to accommodate the new educational models. But you have to work with what we got. But
I also might add, first of all, thank you, Ralph. Great job. One thing I heard tonight, I know he and I have talked about this, maybe a good reason to revisit adding on, because I think what I heard you say was the displaced teacher major challenge is how do I find a place to meet with students? That doesn't mean a classroom, that means a smaller area. And if you recall last time, I think 2 or 3 years ago, we were talking about adding on and we were looking at a price tag of almost what a new high school would be. Whereas now, the wrestling room, for example, almost 20,000 square feet, $1.5 million. We know 63 million is what it's going to take to build another high school. I think it's probably time to go back to the group and say, what would this look like? How much would this cost us? We also have a 16th building that we've already passed the bonds on, even though right now we call it an elementary. Nothing says that we can't go back and ask our voters, look, we have this flex, call it a flex building, whatever you want to call it, but have the ability to create more spaces like the LSU building, which would alleviate some of this. Because when people look at that and say, gee, you're going to jam 2,400, we're not going to do that, but we do have to come up with creative ways. And I think Ralph's group can really help with that.
Oh, sure could. One of the seminars that I attended at the OSBA conference was Active Learning Spaces, I think was the name of the session.
Yes.
And it focused on, I think it was North Canton Central or North Canton, something like that, where they repurposed spaces and figured out how to reinvent certain places in their existing buildings.
Yes.
It was really very interesting, and that might be a good. I have all the contact information. It might be somebody worth chatting with just to see how they went through that process. For instance, the furniture. You know, how they changed their furniture for more flexible. They would actually change furniture configurations 2 or 3 times during a 40-minute class, and they did it very efficiently once the kids realized what they were doing and why. So it was really clever what they were doing.
Well, one of our members, one of the new members, is a gentleman named Mark Scott, and Mark is the facilities manager for the OSU College of Engineering. So he brings a real different perspective in terms of the assignment of students to classrooms and classroom utilization by course for the professors. So he has a really interesting insight.
Thank you, Ralph. Always a well thought out presentation.
Thank you, Tracy.
So next month, what we'll see is potential,
Long-term building.
okay,
30,
Almost
40.
like a deeper dive on the housing.
Exactly.
okay.
Okay, next item is item C, under discussion items at Liberty High School turf. Rob Mayer from the Liberty Athletic Boosters. I think Ralph will come back up as well as Mr. Gordon from facilities. Welcome, Ralph.
Hi.
How are you guys?
Good.
Got a few handouts here for everybody.
Thank you.
See, what things we say.
Good.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, let me first off thank you for the opportunity tonight to present our project to you. Also, congratulations to the Olentangy folks on their field. I know how hard that is, so that's a big thing for them. So congratulations to those folks as well. What we propose is an overview tonight to install a synthetic surface on both the JV and varsity baseball fields at Liberty High School. This project covers the infields only. We're not looking to do the outfield. The outfield will remain natural grass. We would also put a brick wall and a new netting behind the backstop on the varsity field to create a better line of sight for fans. Total cost of the project is roughly about $403,000. And I'll explain some more here in a little bit. In your packet, you have the cash flow statements outlining how we're going to pay this, and I'll go into that here in a little bit. The fields are not just built for the high school. This is a community-wide effort that we're putting together. We have included groups from ages 8 years old all the way through our high school programs. So our Little League program, our travel programs are all involved in this project as well. We have gone out and done a few requests, but we've chosen the Moats Group to do the project. The Moats Group also did our stadium at Liberty High School as well. So there was a level of comfort there with the quality, their ongoing maintenance, and the product and service that they deliver for us. The quote from Moats is also included in the first few pages of your packet. Details what each field will look like. There's some renderings in there as well. The bases and the fields will be pegged to allow all age groups to play on it. So again, emphasizing the community. We've also set up under Liberty Athletic Boosters an LLC to manage the fields. This will be in cooperation with our athletic department. So looking at tournaments, renting the facility out to various organizations, and I'll explain that here in a second as well. Some of the past improvements that Liberty Athletic Boosters has been able to do for the baseball program, such as the scoreboard. We've also put flagpoles in left center field.
new warning track, a new sound system, some new trees. We resurfaced both infields in the last few years, put new brick dust on the warning tracks to really make the facility look nice. The financing. The project currently has all the necessary financing to be completed. We have secured private financing to be able to fund this project. We have a down payment of 25% we'll be putting down. So we've got the financing as well. Again, it's all private. It's done by some folks that live in the community. They are very interested in seeing the baseball program, not just at the high school, but again, our younger groups succeed and grow within the community. So how do we pay for this? What we've done is we've gone out and contracted with various tournaments and various showcase type groups that showcase high school baseball talent. So what we've done is we've been able to go out and secure long-term agreements with those folks to utilize the facility to pay for this. We're using that rental revenue to pay back our lenders. We're also utilizing that rental revenue to start to accrue replacement costs. So in year 3, we are going to then set aside money in a district account to help pay for the renewing of the fields in 10 years. The life expectancy for most is about 10 years. We've also contracted with them in our contract to look at replacing various high areas of usage, such as home plate, the batter's boxes, the mounds, first base area. So they've got that built into their agreement with us to be able to replace some of those areas that are high traffic. Replacement funding is roughly, the quote we received from Modes is $275,000. So again, we'll be putting that aside starting year 3, securing that money, and we will put that into an account with the school district. Other than that, I don't have anything specific. What we've done is in the cash projections, there is an outline of how we're going to do this. It shows year by year cash in, cash out, as well as the set aside for the replacement. Are there any questions at this time on anything?
I think it's impressive that you've managed without anything sitting there to go to organizations and get a commitment for rental.
Right.
But this will be the first turf baseball fields in Central Ohio, right? For
There's
high schools?
the complex, that's right.
Right.
There's one other field that's kind of a joint use. St. Charles has
Oh,
a
their new-
baseball and a football
Yeah.
complex that they put together, so they share turf on that.
Yeah.
But this is truly the first turf complex for high school baseball in the area. There's really only 1 or 2 others in the state that I've been able to find. One is down near Cincinnati, and another we found was actually in Indianapolis. So we're really setting a trend here for breaking new ground. So.
Roger and I had a chance to sit down with your group and was impressed with the work to date and the commitments for the tournaments. What was a little eye-opening to me was the need, for a more available facility and the demand out there for baseball space.
Mm-hmm.
You've got multi-year commitments from some of these tournaments that will create rental revenue that we're not even seeing out of the football stadiums.
Right.
So I think it's fantastic that, 1, the demand is there, 2, we're able to secure that demand early, lock it up for multiple years, give us greater confidence in the sufficiency of the financial model. And there's still, gate and concessions which really haven't been baked into here as kind of a cushion, for lack of a better word. So,
The other thing
the
we really
financial model is great.
We've looked at concessions, gate fee, that's not included. Donations, we've not even included that into our model either. So we're really looking at our largest contract we have in place. We've only projected 2 years, and we're going to work with them going forward. So the way the cash flow, it will even look stronger when they commit to longer term. We've been able to secure some large contracts with them. So.
And so the facility committees kind of run their process. Maybe spend a minute on that. Because one thing is as we went through it with football, we tried to set up a process that facilities would opine on the sufficiency of the surface, and we'd get comfortable with the financing. So we're gonna have Ralph talk about the work the facilities committee did to get comfortable with the surface.
Yeah, I'll be very brief. So this project follows the procedure that was adopted in 2012 for special projects, and where a majority vote of the committee is needed if it's over $5,000 for submittal to the board. And this project obviously meets that. Fortunately for this one, because the due diligence had been done for the fields, it's actually pretty easy. So the specifications of the turf met the requirements built by the committee for the OLSD stadiums. The Musk group, which is going to install this, also did Olentangy delivery, so we felt that mitigated the risk of installation errors. We know they do a good job. Again, the safety had been considered before of turf fields. We did not want to plow that field again. And since the turf for the baseball field complied with those specifications, there really is no question. Now, after we submitted this to the committee for vote, there was a program here on NBC questioning the ingestation by soccer goalies of rubber fill. However, if you look at that, there's really no scientific basis for that. It was anecdotal evidence, and we did not believe that warranted withdrawing the vote or changing the vote. We do believe, however, we just need to keep watching that for additional scientific understanding of turf fields. In terms of maintenance costs, the donors will, the Musk Group will provide annual inspection of seams, fiber, infill depth. The Musk Group warranty looks solid. It looks as good as anything we had on the fields. We also had concern about the batter's box and the pitching landing area where it's high used. I think Jeff said that that's actually easier than on dirt because you simply cut it out and put it back in again. So actually probably better for the turf than it is for the natural. Replacement cost, is my understanding, and Jeff can confirm that the replacement cost is going to be covered by the donor. So again, check mark there. Other issues, because the committee's initial specifications really were directed towards athletic fields, not baseball. We asked Jeff to follow up with 2 additional items. Number one, are the specifications for field support appropriate for baseball? Our concern was that perhaps our specifications did not transition, did not transfer from one to another. So we asked Jeff to follow up on that. And again, would the turf, withstand heavy usage in concentrated areas? And Jeff, do you want to talk about the references you received? You want me to cover? Yeah. Okay, so Jeff got references from the city of Columbus, Berliner Park, and Southeastern Baseball, which I think is in Cincinnati. They satisfied with the turf and felt that it did provide for a longer playing season. There was no concern for the high use areas. Simply cut out and replace the worn turf. Jeff also followed up with consultant use for the stadium projects, assessed whether the specification used for the field projects were satisfactory for baseball. And Greg Gallietti, who's a consultant used for the field projects, considered the specifications satisfactory. So, as a result, the committee voted 13-1 to submit to the board for approval.
Excellent, thank you. Jeff?
Yes, I just had a couple points in summary I just wanted to emphasize. And as Ralph mentioned, he did call a couple other groups who have the turf, and they were very satisfied with it, and highly recommended the Moats group and the turf, which we had good experience with the Moats group as well. So moving forward with them was not a concern. The other thing was the playability of the turf for baseball versus the turf that we put on for football, and they have made some modifications in the area of the base paths and things to be more playable for those areas that you wouldn't necessarily have to do in the grass areas, but the base paths. So they have accommodated that, and we also spoke with, as Ralph mentioned, Greg Gallietti, who is our turf consultant for the other 3 stadium fields. He is going to work with us on this, less on how the turf's put together as the install and the drainage, and that was something we went out and we reviewed the fields with him, reviewed the drainage that's currently in the fields and the process we'd have to go through, and we didn't see any concerns. In fact, we felt like it would be a fairly easy install because there would not have to be a lot of work in the outfield because the drains, everything was already in, so we wouldn't have to dig out, put drains, and we just connect what's there. keep the work within the infield, which then will make really help for the playability that first spring. It's hard to do a project this time of year and then have any natural grass that you've disturbed back up in good shape again for spring. So we don't have a lot of concern there with that as long as we stay on top of it and that the Moats group stays within the scope of their work on the infield. So we feel really good about the project from that standpoint. And as Rob mentioned, the one thing that's different with this turf that we did not experience with stadium is twofold. One is the replacement. We're relying on them to submit funds to us for replacement that the treasurer will then put in an account that is reserved only for replacement of that turf. And the reason for that is the way that the baseball fields are managed a little bit different than the stadiums, and that is that the head baseball coaches manage their fields. They have access to the tournaments, to the teams, and they work with them then on how to maintain the field and take care of it. We don't get the district rentals for baseball traditionally that we would get for a stadium. Prior to even having turf in the stadiums, we still had requests for rentals, and we worked with some groups to do that. Not a lot, but we had some. And with baseball, it's really the local youth organizations who wanted to use those. And any use that we had beyond that were tournaments and things were brought in by the coaches. And that's what, as Rob mentioned, that's an area that they've really focused on, going out and finding those revenue streams and bringing them back. So since the district is not going to see really a savings for the turf going in, and the district's not going to see revenue from rentals, we really emphasize with them that we have to have a replacement plan in place, similar to what we've done with the stadium fields, in that we're collecting every year and putting that aside and tracking it, but different in that we're relying on the donors to provide the replacement as well as donate the original field. So.
And again, when would we start construction, and when would the fields be available?
We're going to start immediately. The completion will be depending on weather. It'll just be a few weeks to get it completed if weather cooperates with we don't see any reason why we wouldn't have it ready, obviously, for spring practices. But as soon as the board can vote and the boosters can organize their payments to Moats, we're ready to progress.
I just want to throw in that Mr. Meeker and Mr. Mayor and Mr. Gordon, I think, are doing the right thing in providing oversight and ongoing management of the usage, which I think was important to have the stake of the athletic director as well as the coaches, which is going to, I think, allow for the maximum revenue return. So I just appreciate all your contributions and your ability to work together on that.
Thank you.
Great.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Next agenda item is item D, the academic update. This is the academic update on academic achievement, college and career readiness. Mr. Petty. I know this is the last installment in the series.
Last installment of the series.
You sound excited.
I know. We are.
I felt like we just started.
We're wearing it down, winding it down. All right, good evening, and again, thank you for this opportunity for the third part of our series of reports on our progress this from last school year. We're concluding with our report on the annual report of academic achievement, and tonight we're reporting on the 5 academic benchmarks and the 18 measurable indicators of our academic progress. There are 3 additional benchmarks on our district continuous improvement plan that are related to finance and operations, and those will be reported on at subsequent board meetings. So, as previously reported, regarding the state report card, just from the district perspective, I'd like to once again remind everybody that we did have 8 A's or 9 report cards issued. We had 8 A's and 1 B, which is using the Lucas scale of determination, an overall letter grade of an A. So we're very, very proud of that state report card. Tonight, though, we are focusing on what we as a district measure ourselves, and that is accountability beyond the state report card. So you see up there that, again, on the state report card, there's 9 letter grades. 152 letter grades for the total buildings. The state report card has a limited scope because it only measures reading and math in grades 3 through 8 and 5 through 8 science and the 10th grade OGT subjects. And those are quantitative measures only. For the better part of 12 years, I've been in the district now 12 years, so I want to say for the better part of 15 years, our Olentangy Continuous Improvement Plan has we try to hold ourselves accountable to a much higher standard than just the state report card. And as the state continues to revise the reporting mechanisms, they're getting closer and closer to our district CIP. So again, I give the people who set this up 15 years ago a lot of credit in this process, but our district CIP has 24 district level indicators. 18 of those are specific to academics. We do have the specific indicators related to finance and building and operations. There are 22 building level indicators throughout the district related to academic progress. And those are a greater scope because we measure ourselves in additional subject areas and additional testing mechanisms beyond just what the state requires us to use. So you see things on there like the progress on the ACT, progress on specific courses or growth in specific courses at the high school level, advanced placement. We measure our progress against similar district comparisons. And then we also include qualitative data, which is data from student surveys specifically.
Can you leave this here a minute? I just have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
So I don't think a lot of people realize that the state report card is so limited in scope. You notice on there, our first and second graders, aren't counted. Our 11th and 12th graders aren't graded. So, to say that the state report card is great, yeah, it is, but it really doesn't encompass all of the learning that is going on with every single student.
Right.
So when you go to our indicators, you get a better reading.
And I think you'll see that when Jack goes through the specific academic benchmarks and the specific indicators, you'll see all those different measures again, and the depth of which we do measure our progress. We also, though, report our overall district performance in other ways beyond just the Olentangy Continuous Improvement Plan and the annual report of academic achievement. Dr. Lucas gives a very comprehensive State of the Schools report every year that reports on additional progress in the arts and in athletics, accomplishments of our students in service activities and everything throughout the district that our students are involved with. And we have also created our quality profile, which is posted on our district website that measures or that reports out, again, a much broader scope of accomplishments throughout the district. So we do try to be very forthcoming with the progress of the district and where our challenges and opportunities for improvement are. I just want to touch on quickly, these are the assessments that we're going to be using next year as we move forward with the state testing. These assessments will be administered in 2014 and 2015, and they'll inform next year's annual report. These aren't the only assessments that we give, though. We do give assessments for kindergarten readiness. We give assessments like the Ames Web for our third grade reading guarantee. We give the Terra Nova test in the second grade for gifted identification. And historically, we've given the Terra Nova in off grades and off subjects, and that informs our projections that we use to design individualized instruction at each grade level.
And so this would be an example of local control.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Those kind of tests. These aren't per se because these are the ones that state, well, the ACT, the PSAT, the Terra Nova, and the off grades, the InView, advanced placements. But and Mrs. Fiesel, you had mentioned this before. We just wanted to highlight for you, given that pending legislation, these are the current or from next year the time that will be spent on assessments. And you see that doesn't include the 11th and 12th grade, which the problematic thing I see in the 4-hour window is that a student who may take 2 or 3 AP classes, each of those tests are 2 or 3 hours long. Right there, they're outside the window. So if the state tells us we can only test kids for 4 hours, that's certainly going to be problematic. So we're hopeful that the pending legislation, while it, we think it's positive to reduce the time that students are tested, that 4 hours doesn't allow us to do all the things that we want to do. We think that the testing is important for program evaluation, for monitoring student progress, but we like the flexibility to determine what's appropriate here and what's necessary. One thing that I would throw out to the legislators is the opportunity for high-performing districts to not have to test every student, and maybe randomly select students to test, or just on some basis like that, as a way to reduce that. So we're anxious to see what will come of that legislation. So, all right, moving on to the specific benchmarks. Mr. Fetty is going to talk specifically about each benchmark and each indicator and where we are.
Good evening. So I provided each of you a supplement of the annual report that you can refer to. This is, again, just an excerpt from the annual report. You'll get the full report when it's back from the printer at the next board meeting. But this covers the district level's performance on those 5 benchmarks, and the full report, as you know, has all of the individual school building data as well. So the first benchmark on the CIP, as you know, is to meet or exceed projected performance levels. We calculate projections internally using many of the assessments Mark just talked about. 15 of 19 subjects increased from the previous year, or maintained at least 80% of students meeting projections. So when we talk about going beyond the state report card and you think about the projections, we have close to 19,000 students. The testing population is somewhat less than that, between grades 3 and 10. About 1,200 students total took tests in grades 3 through 10. But this measures 23,871 individual projections. So a student gets a projection for every test that they take, and those projections are all calculated here. So again, greater scope. The projections are calculated by Dr. Way, our statistician, who takes the previous test results, finds a strong correlation of previous scores to determine projected scores. So that's how we get to those. It's not something we just throw darts at blindly, right? The second benchmark is to facilitate a year or more of achievement for a year of instruction, also known as value added. This actually we covered in detail in the previous board meeting, so I won't spend time on it, but again, met those 4 indicators, A's in those areas, gifted as the highest growth in the state, which we're very proud of. Benchmark 3 is to meet or exceed standards at the district and building levels. This is the benchmark that does focus on the state report card. 80% or more of students score proficient or above in all areas of the state test, and that happened in all areas. In some of those areas we had as high as 99% proficiency or higher. So 80 is the goal, but we exceeded that. And then to increase our performance index, again, as we've discussed many times, our PI has increased to 108.7. Also in the third benchmark is to meet annual measurable objectives. Again, I've talked about this in previous board meetings since it comes on the state report card, and we've talked about our IEP and LEP students not meeting their annual measurable objective in reading and math. Again, it's a higher standard than that, than the state benchmark most times. And it doesn't mean in these cases that these individual subgroups aren't making improvements over the previous year's score. It's just not that they're not at the level that the state has said all students need to be at by that year. What we do with those AMOs, some things we talk about. In the spring, usually we do a presentation to you about interventions, and a lot of that addresses these things. So the student watch list that we create using the projections. We've talked about Ames Web as a universal screener that we've brought into grades K through 3 this year, and we'll continue to expand. We've talked less about intervention and enrichment time, which has been a change we've made to our elementary schedule this year. And double blocking in academic labs at the secondary level is a long-standing practice, but we continue to hear that good reports.
But I know when we talk about the annual measurable objectives or making progress and with the watch list or students who are not projected to be proficient, that's one way we use our projection data to, our teachers use that projection data to drive instruction, but they also use projection data to monitor their students who are projected to be advanced or accelerated. So, in order to the way to drive our PI score is to take our proficient kids and move them to accelerated, and our accelerated projected kids to be advanced, and that also drives our growth scores. So our teachers work very diligently with that information, and to use it to monitor and design individualized instruction for each student.
Benchmark 4 is to be at the top of the state and the nation. So our first indicator is to increase or maintain at least 60% of our students scoring advanced accelerated. So not only do we want 80% or more of our students to be at least proficient, we want 60% of them to be advanced or accelerated, the levels above proficient. All 19 subject areas increased or maintained at least 60% this year. Some areas, third grade reading, as high as 89% of the students were advanced accelerated, which is great. We also want to surpass the advanced and accelerated percentages of our similar district groups. So when we look at, well, maybe it was just an easy test year and we got lucky. Well, we look at the schools that are most like us statistically according to the state and see how our advanced and accelerated scores stack up. And again, in 19 of 19 subjects in this report, we surpassed the similar district average. Here are those similar districts, if you're wondering who that is. I certainly will not read them all to you, but every year the state calculates 20 districts that are most like ours using a lot of factors. I believe there's only one new district to the list, and I wish I could tell you. Actually, I think it was Rexville Broadview Heights joined the group, but I can't remember who they replaced.
I think Hannah might have dropped out.
Yeah, I think you're right. Could have treasure speaking during the academics.
Surprise.
But if you look at that list, we're the
There is fiscal comparison, sorry.
we're the largest.
Yes.
Well, yeah, pretty much everywhere. So again, within benchmark 4, to have a state PI ranking that remains in the top 10% of all districts or increases. Our PI ranking increased, as you can see there, from 5.2 to 4.3, which means we jumped from 32nd highest PI in the state to 26th highest in terms of the ranking. And then there's another indicator there of not met, which was to increase or maintain at least 65% of juniors and seniors participating in AP courses in dual enrollment. Our number dropped from 68.9% to 63.9%. I don't know why. Getting late, right? So that's the one of all of these that really caught my attention. I said, "Wow, because this has been a number that's been steadily climbing. We're obviously really proud of our AP scores. Our AP scores are still climbing. It's just participation." So I called our high school principals. I said, "What's going on? Tell me about it." And they said a couple of things. Notably, one, we have in the past 4 years encouraged sophomores to participate in AP. This is a measure of only juniors and seniors. So we're seeing more sophomores taking AP classes. Hypothesis here, but some of them may be experiencing their AP class for the first time in sophomore year rather than junior year and not continuing to take AP classes. Some students only take 1 or 2 AP classes. They might be doing it in their sophomore year only, and therefore being left out of this. Also, we're being more flexible with student scheduling, as you know, with the enrollment at our high schools and the high number of credits that our students earn. Some students are choosing to leave high school early to go to work or something along those lines. So those are the best 2 hypotheses that we have for the year. We have not decreased the number of AP offerings. We have not closed any sections. And we continue to hold AP up as a wonderful option for our students. And the percentage is still incredibly high compared to other districts. So,
Did we also calculate in the number of students who don't take a test?
we don't calculate those students in.
Because we've seen a slight increase in the number of kids who actually are enrolled in the course, but then decide over the course of the year not to take the test. So that also could have been a small factor in that.
So this is one we're going to continue to keep an eye on. And lastly, the indicator is to increase or maintain at least 75% of juniors or seniors earning a 3 or higher on an exam. And that number did increase from 81.2 to 83%, so the students taking the test are still doing well. Here is a list of all of our 22 AP offerings. In addition to these courses, we do have students taking tests in other areas where they either credit flex to test out, even though we might not have a teacher for a course. Chinese is one oftentimes that there's students taking. Another factor into that calculation is dual enrollment offerings. This is reporting on 2013-14. As you know, we had 3 courses last year, and those options have increased significantly this year and will continue, hopefully, to increase as student interest grows. So dual enrollment continues to become a more viable option for our students. Benchmark 5, before I get into the data on Benchmark 5, it's a great opportunity to talk about the Graphics Way facility. We are going to be putting in there a integrated STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math program next year, heavily focused on career-based experiences. And in the first year, we'll target approximately 150 students. The current traditional capacity is somewhere between 400 and 600 students, meaning students in seats in classrooms. 600 if we did some work to the building on like the bathrooms, things like that, to hold more students. But we are what we're trying to create there is a reproducible program that could go into future facilities as another high school option. And we're also looking at non-traditional schedules. So whereas maybe 400 students could be in the building at a time, if you had some, morning sessions, evening sessions, things like that. We're going to continue to explore all of those options that started way back with that Project 2020, and we continue to look at. But I'm very excited about the facility and the programs we're developing there, and hopefully in another month or two we'll have a lot more to share with you. So Benchmark 5, and again, I guess I should say that facility is going to be specifically, helping this benchmark we have. So to increase or maintain above 90% of seniors giving the top 2 ratings on their exit survey, we met that indicator. Very high marks from our students on surveys. Although it's not in the annual report, we also do surveys of exiting 8th graders and 5th graders to see what the students are saying. Increase or maintain 50% of students meeting all 4 ACT college readiness benchmarks. That indicator is not met. The percentage decreased from 50 to 48%. And if you look through the booklet I've given you, you see that those numbers kind of fluctuate around that each year. That's a very rigorous standard that I would really like to continue to see that trending upward. But the extended focus on science and social studies that I think the Graphics Way facility will provide, integrated with a English and math course, should hopefully lend to some positive results there. The ACT mean scores need to increase or remain at 25. They increased from 24.2 to 24.4. Average ACT score for the state and the nation is around 21.1, I think. And actually, going back to the percentage meeting all 4 benchmarks, the national average there is around 25%. The state average is 28%. And then lastly, the Board of Regents data, last on the slide, Board of Regents data will show that we're decreasing remedial coursework. That number went down from 24% to 21%. And we've talked about that data a lot here with the board, as you know. percentage of remedial courses taken by students at Ohio public colleges out of all of our graduates. And this one is lastly, our high schools. And we said that they would continue to be ranked in the top 500 in the nation as ranked by U.S. News and World Report, Newsweek, and the Washington Post. 6 out of 7 times our high schools were ranked in the top 500. Newsweek, we didn't actually submit data to them this year. They didn't request it. They changed their calculations. Liberty, they got Liberty's data somehow, and they were ranked. Our other schools didn't have a ranking. We didn't provide the data. So Randy must know somebody. And then, so the only one that was not in the top 500 was Olentangy High School, according to the Washington Post. And again, these are national rankings of national high schools. But we don't want to get on Olentangy too poorly, because when we look in Central Ohio, all of our high schools, anyway, you slice it, are in the top 6, if not the single best. So, according to these publications. So, that concludes the 5 academic benchmarks. Hopefully quick enough. Do you have any questions?
That's good. Very good.
Again, you'll have the full report next month.
Thank you.
Great job, Cindy. Okay, the last discussion item, discussion on E, is the first reading of the board policy updates. Mr. Martin, welcome.
Thank you. I believe I sent an update of the policies to you.
Yes.
I think it might have been the end of last week. To review those, we have approximately 20 policies. 3 of them are new policies, or 2 of them rather, and 1 is a discussion policy. I'll just quickly review those for you. The first policy is the 1530 Evaluation Principles, which of course reflects OPES and House Bill 362 language. There are 3 curriculum policies: the curriculum development, adoption of textbooks, and selection of materials, and those all reflect House Bill 487, which talks about establishing a parental advisory committee. Policy 2430 is the district-sponsored clubs, which is a revised policy that includes STEM school students, which we talked about earlier in some of our presentations, as well as 2430-02, also including STEM school students, which is in House Bill 487. We have 2 policies related to medication and care of students with diabetes, which are part of House Bill 264. We have a policy regarding the webpage, the district webpage 754002, which talks about the practice of a district that would link to a local media outlet or contract with commercial vendors to host that website. We also have 2 revised policies regarding the internet. They were formerly Internet Network Use and Safety Policies. They have changed the language title to Student Education Technology and Staff Education Technologies. And so we have those 2 for revision. We have 5 policies that reference the USDA Smart Snacks in Schools Nutrition. We have a policy regarding House Bill 171, which is the release time for religious instruction. That's policy 5223, that allows students to be excused to attend an off-campus course for religious instruction. And then, as requested at the last board meeting, 7250, commemoration of facilities, I believe would like to discuss. We have another new policy that I'm presenting, 8325, receipt of legal documents. It's basically saying who receives legal documents from the school, which is typically my office and most often public records requests. And then we have a student records revision, 8330, which is reflective of House Bill 487. We have policy 8440, which is the school safety policy, which is also part of 487, and the new term emergency management plan, i.e. school safety plans. Then we have the last policy, revision 8660, which is transportation of students, which reflects the administrative code 3301-8319. There you go, in a nutshell.
Okay, question on policy 2210, it's page 8 of 68, talking about the curriculum. It says the curriculum shall, it says emphasize principles of democracy. That should probably be changed to a republic, since we're not a democracy.
We're actually both.
What's that?
Yeah, we covered that last year. Next time.
No, they're not interchangeable terms at all.
Local and national. Yes,
Yes,
sir. Yes, sir.
We're talking about it in general, democracy would be
We talked
a
about
popular election. So if you're going by that, there's only one principle, a free election, or a popular form of government. But the republic is not just majority rules, there are laws put in place to protect individuals. Democracy doesn't have that. My other one's on page 48 of 68 with student records. And it's E, where it says disclose personally identifiable information from education records without consent for organizations that are conducting studies. I think on all these, they need to be changed to with parental consent or information is released, and that should be the rule rather than the exception.
Okay, anything else? Okay.
On policies 725, yeah, that I asked for, I was still under the impression that we couldn't name buildings after people, but apparently we had changed that.
And if you still want more flexibility on that policy, you could say that school buildings may have names based on local history rather than will have names based on local history, if you so choose. I don't know that it makes a large difference, but it's an
It
option.
doesn't prohibit, right?
Right.
Right. So it just prohibits direction, north, south, east, west.
Right.
Okay. I'm fine.
I'm fine with how it reads.
Okay, any other questions, comments, input on the policy changes? Okay,
Thank you.
so they'll be back in December for the second reading and approval.
We'll do that.
Thank you, Ms. Barton. Public participation session number 2, do we have any comments? All right, with that, I will present agenda item 12, which is the board action item to approve the enrollment projections for 2014-15 as presented in discussion item 10B.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion on enrollment projections? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. Bartz,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mr. White,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yes, so the enrollment projections pass 5-0. Mr. Kern, will you present the treasurer action items?
Mr. White, anything you want to pull out separate or?
Nope.
Okay. I'd like to present this evening treasurer action items. A, approve board meeting minutes for October 9th and 23rd. B, approve amended FY15 appropriations at the fund level. And C, approve donations to the district.
I'll move.
I'll second. Any discussion? Okay, call the roll.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Bartz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. White.
Yes.
So the treasurer action items pass 5-0. Superintendent action item, Mr. Lucas.
I would
Dr.
pull out
Lucas, sorry.
superintendent action items
Can you
A.
pull out a few for me? A2, A3, A6, D, and I.
Present superintendent action items A2, 3, 6, D, and I for approval, please.
Just so we're clear, if you're following along at home, 2 is the supplemental positions, which are coaches and class advisors, pupil activity supervisors, the performance-based pay pilot, which is item 6, tuition-free attendance for a student who reaches senior year, and the Liberty Turf is what's under consideration. So with that, I'll accept a motion for those items.
So moved.
Second,
Any discussion?
on the approve the tuition-free attendance for Connor Wagner,
Yes.
that usually means that the student's parents have moved away. They've already paid taxes
Right.
for this, and the student should be able to stay to graduate with this class.
Taxes are paid in arrears. And there are plenty of people in the district that don't have any kids that are still paying.
It's very common practice throughout the state and the country of allowing those seniors to stay once their parents have moved. So we followed that tradition.
And on the Liberty Turf, I would just like to thank the group that has come
Yes.
forward to provide this to our community. It's greatly appreciated.
Okay.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. White?
No.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes. So those items pass 4-1.
Present superintendent action items A1, 4, 5, B, C, E, F, G, H.
I'll move.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Okay, please call the roll.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes. So those items pass 5-0. I'll now entertain a motion to adjourn. Our next meeting is December 11th here at 6:30. A motion, please.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion on adjournment? Call.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,